Today I'm going to show you how to change the oil in a mid-engine car like this Porsche Boxster. This is a 986 Boxster. This will work also with the 987, most of them, and this will also work on the Boxster S. This is just a regular Boxster. I've got it backed up on ramps so far. I've driven around the block a couple times to warm up the engine so that the oil will flow better. And I have it in reverse instead of into first gear so that it's holding it back so it doesn't roll forward if anything happens. And also I have the parking brake engaged. So let's get down. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start draining the oil. So here are the tools you're going to need. You need something to catch the oil. A mallet can come in handy for things that don't come out easily. Definitely need a torque wrench. A breaker bar is not a bad idea. If you don't have a breaker bar, you can usually use a regular wrench and a socket wrench or a ratchet, so that way you can get things out. And depending on how much room you have over there, you might want an extension just to get it. Oh, and then you've got the oil filter adapter, so you can get out your oil filter housing. Also, a pair of gloves and a towel come in very handy because this can be a messy job. So to change the oil, first we have to drain it. So it comes in handy with a breaker bar. You're going to need this 8mm hex tool. Put it right in the center of it. And we just brake, torque. Now the oil is hot in here.
Oil is hot in here. That you know these are done.
So what we want to do is have this ready.
Ready.
And we're going to have our little catcher for the oil ready. And once we've break the initial torque with the breaker bar, it then becomes easier to take off the breaker bar and swap in a ratchet so we can loosen the oil. So we're going to loosen this all the way and then put it into it, start it draining. Now this oil drain has this nice mesh here, and the nice thing here is if our drain plug goes in, it won't go in and be lost in the oil, so we'll be able to just grab it out after all the oil drains if that happens. So now we just let the oil drain for a while. It's going to take a while because this car has anywhere, depending on your year, 7 to 9 or 10 quarts of oil, so it takes a little bit of time for all that to drain through. So you might want to take off the oil filler cap. This allows air to go through so the oil comes out more smoothly, and will help it just get more of the oil out as we're draining it. It also, since we've warmed up this car, we're more likely to get more of the oil out because it's warmer. So let's say you don't have a breaker bar like this one. There are a couple other options. You can just take your ratchet, your mallet, and whack the end of the mallet and the ratchet if it doesn't break torque easily, and that'll sometimes work. Another thing is if you have a wrench and a regular ratchet, you can put it on like this, which gives you a little more leverage, so that way you can get a little more. Ideally you want a breaker bar, but if you don't have it, this can be the best thing. So while the oil's draining, or right after it's done, you want to inspect the drain plug for debris and kind of clean it off. I've got a rag here, so just kind of clean it off. And also you'll want to replace the crush washer with a new one every oil change, just to ensure a good, nice seal, so that way you're less likely to have any leaks. This is where no matter how careful you are, you don't get your hands dirty. I just dipped my finger in some new motor oil and just going to coat the threads with it to help it have a better seal after cleaning off. I also am going to coat the new crush washer in it, so that way we have a better seal. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our torque wrench. It's set to 37 foot-pounds of torque, which is also 50 Newton meters, for those who use that kind of. And we're just going to properly torque our drain plug. There we go. So I'll just take a clean rag around here and dry that off, and we will go on to the oil filter. So we're going to use our trusty breaker bar here, and we've got our oil filter cap wrench. Set it in there, and we should brake torque, and we can unscrew it now by hand, and then we'll move over the oil drain catcher, because there's only oil that comes out of here as well. So just drain out all the oil there, and then we'll be, after that's drained out of the oil filter, we will take out and replace it with the new oil filter, including the seals. So after you pull it out, you might have to tug a little bit to get it out. Here's the old oil filter. It's a good idea to look at it for specks of metal. You may even want to grab a magnet, and I'm going to grab one in a second, and just make sure there's no metal in here. That can be a sign that your IMS is starting to fade. I mean, there'll be dirt and little particles of stuff, but you don't want any metal in there, because you don't want your IMS bearing to go out. That will kill your engine and cause it just to grenade. Not a good thing, and this can be one of the warning signs if you've done that. Even if you've done the IMS retrofit, where you have the updated IMS bearing, still recommend doing this just as a precaution. And even if you have the earlier cars with the double bearings that fail less, this is still a good practice. Everything looks good in this one, and I'm gonna go grab the magnet and just double check. I'll let you know if I find anything there, but from a first look, it looks like we don't have any metal chunks, so that's always a good sign. So we'll go grab our new oil filter. Next, we need to get off this little rubber ring. So, got a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver. There's a little notch right in here that it fits right in. You can get that in there. Comes right off.
Right up?
That's my helper, Elijah. Say hi, Elijah.
Hi.
Don't do the... Alright, so now we're going to take off our glove. And I'm going to put a little oil on this one as well. Get it nice and lubricated so we get a better seal. And once we have it lubricated, we'll replace it on our little oil filter holder. I do like to take a rag around the end before we do that and just kind of clean anything. This is a lint-free towel. That's what you want. You don't want any lint left on it. Either that, you can use a lint-free paper towel as well. I prefer these little microfibers that don't leave lint. So put just a little more oil, clean oil on it. Make sure we got a very good seal. And then just work your way on it. You just have to stretch it a bit. Comes right on. There we go. Now we got our new seal and we'll get this back in the car. Before we get it back in the car though, I forgot one thing. Let's put our new clean oil filter right inside the housing. Push it down a bit so it locks. It'll lock the rest of the way once we put it in, but we want it to come down there. If you notice, that locks and it kind of holds it in, and it takes a little pushing to get it back out after you get it in there. So now we're going to take a little bit of oil, put it in our oil filter. You don't have to do this necessarily, but it does help prevent it from running dry on its when we first start it up. So just put a bit of oil in there.
I want to have it there. I want to have that though.
You want to have the other glove? The other one's there. Well, I won't use it.
I
But
wanna eat it.
in a minute. But we put oil in there. My helper's going to use gloves apparently, and we're going to put this up in the car. So now, just want to take a rag and kind of clean this up a bit, and then we'll get the oil filter housing back on there. Just kind of loosen it in so that you get it all lined up, and then hand tighten it a bit. Before we get out our torque wrench and tighten it all the way with the torque wrench. After hand tighten it, take your torque wrench. Oops. Make sure you don't still have the 8mm hex on there because it won't help you. And then put your torque wrench on your oil wrench, and you gotta tighten it until get torque. This is 19 foot-pounds of torque, 25 Newton meters. And if you have one that has Newton meters on it, the housing on this actually has it written on it, so you won't forget that it's 25 Newton meters. And there we go, we broke torque. So let's talk a bit about motor oils. Today I'm going to be using Mobil 1, the Advanced Full Synthetic, but you might be wondering, can I just use like a synthetic blend or a traditional dinosaur motor oil? If you do use this, I would recommend changing your motor oil more often, probably 3,000 miles. If you use Mobil 1, Porsche says you can go 15,000 in the book. They updated that to 10,000, and I personally only do 5. But you can get this at Walmart actually for $25 for 5 quarts. You're going to need to buy 2 of them, which is still more expensive because these are the Valvolines is like $16, something like this Valvoline synthetic blend. So if you want to do it more often, this will probably be okay. Porsche does recommend Mobil 1, and that is not a bad idea to use that. The only thing that I will say about the differences, if you do have a leaky engine, you might want to go with something like a synthetic blend or a full dinosaur oil, because sometimes the full synthetics can help them leak more. But if your engine's not leaky, then keep using full synthetic, especially if that's been used in it the entire time. So now we've taken off the lid earlier. So now we got our funnel, and we'll take our Mobile One and start filling it in. So after you're done using a bottle, at first you're going to do one 5-quart bottle, and then you're going to do part of the next. And the reason that you're not going to do the whole thing is you're going to be having to check the oil. In this car we have a dipstick. It's right back there, the yellow thing. In some of the later Boxsters, the dipstick is gone, and you will only be able to check it in the dash. You can check this one on the dash as well, but we have a dipstick here so we can get an idea. We want to get it pretty close to filled, but not all the way filled because it's not level yet. One other thing to discuss is this is 10W40 oil. You might want to use 20W50 if you're in a really warm environment. I live in a place that does get over 100 degrees, but during the winter, which we're still in the winter, I use the 10W40, and then over the summer I will up it to the 20W50, since then we'll be able to have just a little more protection for the car at some higher temperatures. Now I've put in a little over 7 quarts, about 7.5 quarts, and so we're getting close to how much it should have in it. So I'm going to check the dipstick, and if you notice, it's just barely about halfway up. And we're going to clean this off and run it in there again. We're just going to check the oil level with the dipstick, and you can see it's just, sorry for shaking it so much, but if you can see, it's just past that bottom line, which means we're about a quart low, which is actually where we're going to go ahead and move the car to a level surface before filling it up the rest of the way, because we don't want to overfill it. We should have enough to be able to do that. We're going to do this very quickly. We're just going to start the car, drive forward, and turn it off. Before starting the car, just check that all the caps, everything's kind of closed. I'm going to come up under here, make sure haven't left any tools. Check that there's no leaks on anything. And you might want to clean up any spills you may have made. So everything looks good there. So now we'll go start the car. So now we're in the car about to start it. And we're just going to turn it on. Get the little readout, let it give it a second. You'll see that we're in between the lines, which means we do have oil in there. So that is a good thing. So we're going to go ahead and just move this car up in first gear and just kind of gently drive it forward quickly. And then turn it off. So now what we're going to do, now that we've done that, we're going to let it sit and rest for a little bit so all that oil can settle, and then we'll check all our levels again and fill up whatever we need to fill up. Sometimes it takes a while for this to happen. You'll notice on your reader, that if you do it right away, it'll say like you have 10 or 20 minutes depending on whatever, and it just kind of counts down from there. So if you're wanting to do this, you're just going to have to wait. Go ahead and let it sit. I mean, let it sit for an hour or two. That's no problem, because then you'll get the exact resting level, which is what this is taking. So you're going to go ahead and let that oil settle, and then we will finish up. All right, so now we've let the car sit for a couple hours actually, just to really make sure everything went down. So I'm going to open the oil filter, or filler cap, and we're going to check the oil and see. And we're going to put it back in. Now again, if you have a newer car, a newer Boxster, you're going to do this all from the dash. You're not going to have a dipstick back here, so you don't have to go back and forth. We'll use the dipstick and then use the dash as the final test. So it looks like we have just a little bit of oil. Looks like we need to put in about a quart. So to do that, we'll put in about half a quart at a time. Let it go down and just slowly fill it up so that we don't overfill. All right, so we're done filling it up, and put a little bit. We'll just do one more dipstick check. So I figured it didn't bother showing you, and we are going to have to wipe it off to get an accurate reading. And don't know if you can see it very well there, but it hit right at the line. So we should be good. What we're going to want to do though is let it rest again. We're going to check it inside the car and make sure we're good there. But we should be done. Now what you're going to want to do is let it sit overnight and check it again in the morning. Check underneath, make sure there's no leaks before you drive it. You just want to be extra careful that your oil's good before you drive it around. And then you might even want to, especially if you do this on, say, a Saturday, maybe on Sunday, drive it around the block so that way you don't. Sorry, I should have done this. But drive it around the block so that way you know that the oil is in good shape. So let's go into the cabin and we'll see what we got. All right, so now we're back inside the car, and we're going to just check the oil here in the dash. So I'm going to turn the key on, give it a couple seconds. Since we've let it sit so long, it should only take about 5 seconds. And there we are. We're right at, not the top, very top, we're the one line between, and if you notice there's 2 arrows that show us where we should be, and we're right in that area where we should be. Now, like I said, we'll check it again in the morning to make sure. The one thing that it is better to be is under a little bit than over. So if it's 1 notch under, go ahead and let it sit under overnight before you put more oil in. Make sure everything flows down to the bottom where it's going to be read properly, and then to the next day come back and check it again so that way you know. But that's it. Some shops will charge you $300+ to do this, and as you can see, changing your oil in a Boxster, it's not some big job. I mean, I've heard of shops asking as much as $500 because they claim, oh, it's difficult because it's a mid-engine car. It isn't that difficult. There was nothing even to remove. It's just back it up instead of push it forward as a front engine car would be. It's very simple. You do need a couple of tools. You need a torque wrench to make sure everything's torqued properly, and you need that 8mm hex, and then everything else you're going to need for any oil change. I mean, the oil filter wrench, you're going to need that for anything. So it's not really any more difficult than any other car. The oil, if you're using the full synthetic, does cost a little bit more, but you can go 5,000 to 10,000 miles on it. I would recommend changing at 5 just to be safe, but you can go 10,000. Some people even go 15. but that is a little much for my own sanity. I don't mind spending a little bit more just to make sure that the oil's in good shape. So that's it. Go ahead and save some money. Go do your Boxster yourself. And if you're thinking of buying a 986 Boxster, I think we've helped you know that, hey, it doesn't cost $1 million to change the oil in this car, which a lot of people will use to talk you out of it. And also we gave you a little tip to check the IMS to make sure the intermediate shaft bearing is still in good shape. So thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe down below. And we'll see you next time. Oh, and comment on how you like this video and how we could improve it. And thank you very much.